Ethan had just returned from work, sinking into his favorite chair with a sigh of relief. He was looking forward to a quiet evening. His wife, Emily, was at the grocery store, and as soon as she got back, they planned to cook dinner together and watch the next episode of their favorite show. As he relaxed, a loud knock at the door startled him. Ethan chuckled to himself, assuming Emily must have forgotten her keys again. But when he opened the door, his smile froze. Standing there, beaming from ear to ear and surrounded by a stack of suitcases, was his mother, Carol. She was flushed from the effort of hauling her luggage and looked absolutely delighted. "Mom?" Ethan stammered, his voice filled with confusion. "What are you doing here?" Carol, a robust woman with an air of unshakable confidence, pulled him into a tight hug. "Surprise, sweetheart. I've got great news," she exclaimed. "I sold my condo, and I'm about to make us all rich." Ethan blinked, unsure he'd heard her correctly. "You sold your condo?" "That's right," Carol said proudly, brushing past him into the apartment. She plopped down on the couch with a grin. "I invested every penny into stocks, and in just a week, I'm going to have so much money, we can all go on a luxury vacation." "Start packing, honey." Ethan's jaw dropped. He knew his mom had always been drawn to get-rich-quick schemes, but this was on another level. "Mom, are you serious? Who did you sell your place to? And what stocks are you even talking about?" Before Carol could answer, the front door opened, and Emily walked in, balancing grocery bags. She froze at the sight of Carol's suitcases. "What's going on?" Emily asked, setting the bags down on the counter. Ethan turned to his wife, his voice laced with disbelief. "My mom sold her condo. She says she's invested it all in stocks and is staying here while she waits to get rich." Emily's jaw dropped, and one of the bags slipped from her grasp, spilling apples across the floor. She stared at Carol, searching for any hint that this was some sort of joke. But Carol just smiled warmly. "Don't look so worried, sweetheart," she said. "This is for all of us. Without me, you two would never get ahead." Emily could barely process what she'd just heard. She stared at Carol, trying to suppress her growing frustration. "You sold your condo?" she asked, her voice carefully controlled. Carol nodded enthusiastically. "Yes. I found this amazing opportunity online. They promised unbelievable returns. I just had to act fast. So, I sold my place and invested every cent. Don't worry, you'll thank me when the profits roll in." Ethan rubbed his temples, his disbelief evident. "Mom, please tell me you didn't fall for one of those online scams. Who did you sell the condo to? What company is this?" "Oh, don't be so negative, Ethan," Carol said with a wave of her hand. "You worry too much. Everything is fine. In just a week, we'll be living the high life. Imagine, a big house, fancy cars, and vacations wherever we want." Emily exchanged a look with Ethan, her concern growing. She knew Carol had a history of impulsive decisions, but this was far worse than she'd ever imagined. "Carol," Emily said carefully, trying to keep her voice calm, "did you talk to a financial advisor before you made this decision? Or even a lawyer?" "Of course not." Carol scoffed. "Those people just want to take your money. This is the real deal, and I didn't need anyone slowing me down." Ethan let out a deep sigh, sitting down beside Emily. "Mom, you've been scammed before. Remember the pyramid scheme? And the miracle weight loss business? You can't keep throwing money at these things." Carol's face darkened, but she quickly replaced her frown with a smug smile. "That's different. This is a sure thing. You'll see. And in the meantime, I'll just stay here with you two for a week or two until everything is finalized." Emily froze. "Stay here?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly. "Of course," Carol replied, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Where else would I go? I've sold my place. Don't worry, I won't be a bother." I just need a little space and some home-cooked meals while I wait. Emily's patience was wearing thin, but she bit her tongue, looking to Ethan for support. He hesitated, clearly torn. "Mom," he began, "maybe we should take a closer look at this investment of yours. Do you have any paperwork we can review?" Carol waved him off again. "Oh, stop being such a worrier. Everything is fine. Trust your mother for once, Ethan." Over the next few days, the tension in the apartment became unbearable. Carol made herself at home, acting as if she were a guest at a luxury resort. She spent her days watching TV, asking Emily to cook elaborate meals, and dismissing any attempt to discuss her investment. Emily, who had been trying to remain polite, finally reached her breaking point one evening. "Ethan," she said, her voice low but firm, "we can't keep letting this slide. Your mom sold her home and might have been scammed, and now she's living here like nothing's wrong. We need to figure this out, fast." Ethan nodded, guilt weighing heavily on his shoulders. "You're right," he admitted. "She's my mom, and I love her, but this is getting out of control. I'll try talking to her again." That night, Ethan confronted Carol. "Mom, we need to talk about this investment. If it's legitimate, great. But if it's not, we need to act now before it's too late." Carol crossed her arms, glaring at him. "You're not my parent, Ethan. I know what I'm doing. Just wait and see." But Ethan wasn't backing down this time. "Mom, I'm serious. If you've been scammed, we need to report it immediately. You can't keep pretending this is fine." Carol huffed, muttering under her breath about being unappreciated, but she reluctantly handed over some documents. Ethan and Emily pored over them that night, their suspicions quickly confirmed. The so-called investment was nothing more than a fraudulent scheme. The next morning, Ethan and Emily sat down with Carol, the damning paperwork spread out on the kitchen table. Carol sipped her coffee, looking less enthusiastic than she had been but still stubbornly defiant. "Mom," Ethan began gently, "we looked into this. It's a scam. These people aren't legitimate, and they've taken your money. We need to act fast if we're going to have any chance of recovering it." Carol frowned but didn't meet his eyes. "That's impossible," she said, shaking her head. "They promised." "Mom," Ethan interrupted, his tone firmer now. "Look at this. They don't even have a registered business. The website is fake, and the contact information goes nowhere. This isn't a promise, it's a trap." Carol's face fell, and for a moment, it seemed like the truth was sinking in. But then she crossed her arms defiantly. "You're wrong," she snapped. "I just need to wait. They said the money would come through in a week." Emily, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. "Carol, if you don't report this now, you'll lose everything. There's a process for handling scams like this, but the longer you wait, the harder it'll be to do anything about it." Carol slammed her coffee mug down on the table. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped at Emily. "You've always underestimated me." Ethan stepped in, his voice calm but unwavering. "This isn't about underestimating you, Mom. It's about protecting you. Please, let us help you." For a long moment, Carol sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the table. Then, with a heavy sigh, she muttered, "Fine. Do whatever you think you need to do." That day, Ethan and Emily filed a report with the police and contacted a fraud hotline. They also attempted to track down the buyers of Carol's condo, hoping to negotiate some way to reverse the sale. It was a long shot, but they had to try. Meanwhile, Carol's demeanor shifted. She was no longer boastful or dismissive but sullen and defensive. She spent her days watching TV and avoiding conversations, clearly unwilling to admit the full extent of her mistake. For Emily, Carol's presence became increasingly difficult to bear. She cleaned up after Carol's messes, cooked her meals, and tiptoed around her moods, all while trying to maintain her own work schedule. One evening, as Ethan returned home from work, Emily met him at the door, her expression tense. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said quietly. He followed her into the living room, where she sat down and folded her hands in her lap. I know she's your mom, and I know this is hard for you. But she can't keep living here like this. It's not fair to us. Ethan nodded slowly, guilt flashing across his face. I know, he admitted. I've been thinking the same thing. But where else is she supposed to go? She's an adult, Ethan, Emily replied firmly. She needs to take responsibility for her decisions. We can help her find a place, but she can't stay here forever. It's already been a week, and nothing's changing. Ethan sighed, leaning back in his chair. You're right, he said finally. I'll talk to her tomorrow. She needs to understand that this arrangement isn't permanent. That night, Ethan lay awake, torn between his loyalty to his mother and his commitment to his marriage. He loved them both, but the tension was becoming unbearable. He knew that the conversation ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was one he could no longer avoid. The following morning, Ethan steeled himself for the conversation with Carol. He found her in the living room, lounging on the couch and watching a soap opera. A plate with crumbs and an empty coffee mug sat on the table next to her. Mom, he began, sitting down across from her, we need to talk about your plans moving forward. Carol muted the TV but didn't turn to face him. What plans? I already told you, I'm waiting for the money to come through. Ethan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. Mom, we both know that's not going to happen. The investment was a scam, and we've already filed reports about it. What's done is done. Now we need to figure out where you're going to live. Carol finally turned to him, her face a mixture of disbelief and anger. Where I'm going to live? I'm staying here. Where else would I go? Mom, Ethan said gently but firmly, this isn't a permanent solution. Emily and I love you, but we can't keep living like this. We'll help you find a place, a rental close to us, something affordable, but you can't stay here indefinitely. Carol's expression hardened. So, that's it? You're throwing me out? No one's throwing you out, Ethan replied, trying to keep his tone calm. But this is our home, and you've been here for over a week. It's starting to take a toll on us, and we need to set some boundaries. Boundaries? Carol snapped, her voice rising. I'm your mother, Ethan. I raised you. I took care of you. And now, when I need help, you're just going to shove me aside like I'm nothing? Emily, who had been listening from the kitchen, stepped into the room. Carol, no one is saying you're nothing, she said carefully. But you've been staying here without contributing, and it's causing tension. We want to help you, but it has to be in a way that works for all of us. Carol's face flushed with anger. Oh, I see how it is. This is your doing, isn't it, Emily? You've been whispering in Ethan's ear, turning him against me. That's not true, Mom, Ethan interjected. This is my decision. Emily and I are a team, and we both feel the same way about this. Carol stood abruptly, her voice trembling with emotion. I can't believe this. After everything I've done for you, Ethan. After all the sacrifices I made. And now you're letting your wife treat me like I'm a burden. Mom, that's not fair, Ethan said, his patience wearing thin. You've made a mistake, and we've done everything we can to help you. But you need to take responsibility for your actions. We'll help you find a new place, and we'll support you however we can, but staying here isn't an option anymore. Carol stormed off to the guest room, slamming the door behind her. Ethan sat back on the couch, his head in his hands. Emily sat down beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing, she said softly. She may not see it now, but this is what she needs. Ethan nodded, though the guilt still gnawed at him. I just hope she'll understand eventually. That evening, Ethan began searching for rental options for Carol. He found a small, affordable apartment close to their home and reached out to the landlord to arrange a tour. He knew convincing Carol to move out wouldn't be easy, but at least now he had a plan. The next day, Ethan approached Carol with the details of the apartment he had found. She was sitting at the dining table, scrolling through her phone with a sour expression. "Mom," Ethan said, sitting down across from her, "I've found a place for you. It's a small one-bedroom apartment, just 10 minutes from here. The rent is affordable, and the landlord is ready to show it to us tomorrow." Carol looked up from her phone, her eyebrows raised. "An apartment? You really expect me to live in some little box while you two live here in this big place?" "Mom, this isn't about comparing spaces," Ethan said patiently. "It's about helping you get back on your feet. We're willing to cover part of the rent until you can save up for something better. This isn't permanent, but it's a start." Carol's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, Ethan thought she might finally agree. But then her expression hardened. "No," she said firmly. "I'm not going. I'm staying right here, and you can't make me leave." Emily, who had been quietly listening from the kitchen, stepped into the room. "Carol, this isn't about making you leave," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "It's about creating a healthier environment for all of us. You can't just ignore the impact this is having on us." Carol stood abruptly, slamming her hands on the table. "Impact? I'm your family. If anyone should have an impact on your lives, it's me." She turned to Ethan, her voice rising. "You're really going to let her talk to me like this? After everything I've done for you?" Ethan sighed, standing up to face her. "Mom, this isn't about Emily. It's about you refusing to take responsibility for your actions. You sold your condo without consulting anyone, invested in a scam, and now you're expecting us to clean up the mess. We've been patient, but this has to end." Carol glared at him, her face red with anger. "You're ungrateful," she spat. "I sacrificed so much for you, and this is how you repay me? By throwing me out like trash?" Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "No one is throwing you out. We're giving you a chance to rebuild, but you need to meet us halfway. If you don't take this opportunity, I don't know how else we can help you." That evening, Carol retreated to the guest room without another word. Ethan and Emily sat together on the couch, both emotionally drained. "I don't think she's going to go willingly," Emily said quietly. "She will," Ethan replied, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. "She has to. I'll talk to her again tomorrow." The next morning, Ethan knocked on the guest room door. Carol opened it reluctantly, her expression guarded. "Mom," Ethan said gently, "I know this is hard for you. But you can't stay here forever. We've already talked to the landlord, and the apartment is ready for you to move in. I'll help you get settled, and we'll visit you often. You're not alone in this, but you have to take this step." Carol looked at him for a long moment, her emotions flickering between anger and sadness. Finally, she sighed. "Fine," she said grudgingly. "But don't think I'm happy about this." "I don't expect you to be happy, Mom," Ethan said, his voice soft. "I just want you to be okay." A few days later, Ethan helped Carol pack her belongings. The process was tense but quiet, with Carol offering only the occasional complaint about the size of the apartment or the inconvenience of the move. Ethan did his best to remain patient, but the strain was evident. Emily stayed out of the way, choosing instead to prepare the apartment for Carol's arrival. She cleaned the small space, stocked the kitchen with essentials, and left a welcome note on the counter. While she still harbored frustration over Carol's behavior, Emily wanted to ensure her mother-in-law felt supported in this transition. When the moving day arrived, Ethan drove Carol to her new apartment. She sat silently in the passenger seat, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "This place is just temporary, Mom," Ethan said as they pulled into the parking lot. "Once you've saved up, we can look for something bigger or more permanent." Carol said nothing, simply nodding as she stepped out of the car. The apartment was small but cozy, with just enough space for Carol to be comfortable. As Ethan carried the last box inside, he turned to his mother. "Here it is," he said, forcing a smile. "It's not much, but it's a fresh start. Carol walked through the space, inspecting it silently. Finally, she sighed and sat down on the couch. "It's fine," she said flatly. "Thank you for helping." "You're welcome," Ethan replied. He hesitated, then added, "Mom, I hope you know this wasn't easy for us. We're not trying to push you away. We just want what's best for everyone." Carol looked at him, her expression softening slightly. "I know," she said quietly. I didn't think it would come to this." "It doesn't have to stay this way forever," Ethan reassured her. "But we need to take things one step at a time. And this is the first step." That evening, Ethan returned home to find Emily waiting for him in the living room. She looked up from her book as he walked in, her expression cautious. "How did it go?" she asked. "It went okay," Ethan said, sitting down beside her. "She wasn't thrilled, but she's settled in. I think she'll be fine." Emily nodded, placing her hand on his. "You did the right thing, Ethan. For her and for us." "I know," he said, though the weight of the decision still lingered in his heart. "I just hope she sees it that way someday." In the weeks that followed, the tension that had hung over Ethan and Emily's home began to dissipate. Without Carol's constant presence, they found themselves reconnecting, rediscovering the harmony they'd once shared. Carol, meanwhile, slowly adjusted to her new life. At first, she spent most of her time at home, watching TV and brooding. But as the days went on, she began to reach out to old friends and even took up a part-time job at a local boutique. Ethan visited her regularly, bringing groceries and checking in on her progress. While their relationship was still strained, there were moments of warmth and understanding that gave him hope. One afternoon, during a visit, Carol surprised him by saying, "I've been thinking, Ethan. Maybe I do need to be more careful about my decisions. I don't want to cause you and Emily any more trouble." Ethan smiled, relief washing over him. "That means a lot, Mom." "Thank you." Back at home, Ethan shared the conversation with Emily. She smiled, leaning into him. "Maybe this is a turning point for her." "Maybe," Ethan agreed. "But even if it's not, at least we've taken a step in the right direction." Emily nodded, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. "Whatever happens, we'll handle it together." As they sat in the quiet comfort of their home, Ethan and Emily felt a renewed sense of strength in their marriage. The challenges with Carol hadn't been easy, but they had proven that, no matter what, they could face them together. And for now, that was enough.